Now, if I'm not beating myself up to the gut-wrenching and brutal sound of a band I've covered previously on this channel by the name of Swans, I'm probably listening to other bands consisting of what people have never heard in their lives, or maybe a bit of Pink Floyd, but that's besides the point. I have a very diversely random music taste covering a bunch of genres and years. There is one of these bands that I'm sure no one has heard of before, who made an album I like to cite as my favourite 60s album of all time. Reality was released in 1968 as a garage/proto-rock album by a band called Second Hand, with a touch of some progressive material included. This was one of two albums made by the band, the latter consisting of more experimental and symphonic materials, named Death May Be Your Santa Claus. Reality by Second Hand is sometimes considered to be one of the first garage/progressive rock recordings. Most of this album's material was recorded in early 1967. Reality by Second Hand is sometimes considered one of the first garage/progressive rock recordings. Most of the album's material was recorded in 1967. Now, because I want to extend the length of this video and because little to no people know about this band called Second Hand, I'm going to give you all a little history lesson about the band, while songs from this album play in the background, so you can get a good depth on how they came to be, and also just so you can realise how fucking good this album is from start to finish. Second Hand was formed by a few blokes in their teen years in 1965 with the alias The Next Collection. They were doing your average little band at the time, doing a couple of shows and whatever bullshit. Well, the band won a so-called Streatham Ice Rink Battle of the Bands, whatever the fuck that is. And winning this awarded them with being able to record some demo songs at a studio called Maximum Studios. They recorded two songs, A Fairy Tale and Steam Tugs. These demo songs were later added to the 2007 repressing of Reality on CD. Vic Keary, who owned the studio, thought they sounded pretty nifty and inquired if they record a studio album signed to their label, which was humbly accepted. They signed themselves to a label with the new alias called The Moving Finger. So they recorded their album and shit, but they came across a disastrous problem. There was already a band called The Moving Finger who released some other songs on a fuck-ass label, so they had to change their name. The band came up with the name Second Hand as a nod to the fact that all of their instruments were bought second hand. This is the reason why the album was released a year after recording, because of this little cock-up. When the album Reality released at the end of 1968, Second Hand, as a tribute to their new name, decided to make the packaging and cover of their vinyl to look second hand bought, which they did a pretty good job, because I love this album cover. The album received some positive acclaim from buyers, but unfortunately, Polydor jammed their fingers so far up their arse that they didn't even try and promote this album as much as it should have deserved. They didn't release any singles for the album, which made a dent in its success. Because of this, Second Hand were pissed the fuck off at this shitty label, so they rightfully left them. And that's really the story of Second Hand, I guess. They made an album in 1971 called Death May Be Your Santa Claus, which flopped. And a year later, an album called Chillin', which was experimental jam, under a new name, Chillin', until they all disbanded and fucking died. Now that we've got all that shit out of the way, it's time to talk about the star of this show, Reality. This album has 10 canonical songs ranging from genres like progressive, psychedelic, garage rock and proto-metal. Because of the fact that essentially no bands were making music like this at least as early as 1967, this makes the album very unique and ahead of its time. The things I like about this album are the drum works, the intensity of some of these songs, mainly A Fairy Tale and Rhubarb, and there are some really cool instrumentals in this. If I had to choose the weakest link in this album, I'd probably say that the singer, Ken Elliott, doesn't have that great of a voice. His voice has some variety to it, but it doesn't really help the fact that he can get a bit annoying at times, especially when he starts shouting and elongating his words. But that's not the worst thing, because there's quite a lot of instrumental solos in this album. I like to split this album into three parts in my head canon. The first four, obviously the introduction, everything's light-hearted and bright and, whatever shit. 5 to 7 is reflecting back on life, songs like We Are Slowly Getting Older and The World Will End Yesterday fit into this quite well. Then tracks 8 through 10, my personal favourite section, is where the progressive elements kick in. Mainliner clocks in at 6 minutes 18, and the self-titled song called Reality clocks in at 8 minutes and 32. Reality can also be shown to be a loose concept album derived from a bloke called Dennis James, a name that appears in several songs and 2 titles. The first mention of the so-called Dennis James is in the fitting title Dennis James the Clown. This song may sound a bit silly at first, but if you re-listen to the song after finishing the album, it'll feel insanely upsetting and melancholic. Probably the only circus sounding song that can make you cry. The song talks about, obviously, Dennis James, where he may or may not be portrayed as a clown, making people laugh and happy. It's a pretty nice song and ironically one of my favourites off this album. The lyrics go on about, I need to see this funny man as I am feeling down. The only person that makes me happy is Dennis James the Clown. And the kids all sing when he comes to the town. Second mention of Dennis James is in the again fitting the title with Dennis James Ode to DJ, DJ being his initials. The lyrics talking about Dennis James is standing by the chocolate machine. He didn't take advice or try and bring himself a wife. Nobody can help him now. It's a rather light song, but you can't help but indulge how vaguely upsetting it is with the lyrics. The end of the song lyrics say, now he's gone, won't see him no more, which this interpretation gets answers to where he goes at the end of the song. After this song, the album enters its progressive phase, with the second most upsetting song on this album being Mainliner. It starts as this really slow and melancholy song, and ends in a really loud and gut-wrenching song that transitions into reality. While the song Mainliner doesn't exactly mention Dennis James, the lyrics talk about, in the story it tells a man who died very young and couldn't understand, which may be a hint to Dennis James' aftermath. Now that Mainliner is finished, it transitions into reality, where, you guessed it, talks about having to face reality and that the dream you thought of is gone. Very beautiful shit. The song also ends in a similar loud fashion to Mainliner. Now reality is finished, you have reached the last song in this album, and my god, the Bath song is one of my favourite songs of all time, and hands down, the best song of the 60s. Do you remember Dennis James from earlier? Remember how you got told that he went missing and no one knows where he is? Well, we finally get to learn the aftermath of this fact. The singer talks about how he's sitting in his bath, soaking, joking, and wondering why he's been deserted. I'm all alone, you didn't ring the telephone. It's such a beautiful song, and the end will make you cry.
Today, in his basement flat in South London, the celebrated Dennis James was found dead in his bath. Police were called in when his wife failed to rouse him on the telephone. His death is believed caused by an overdose of drugs.
My favourite song on this album is the Bath song. My least favourite is Steam Tugs. I rate this album 9 hands out of 10.